Story 1. It was a commonplace Friday night, and orders were pouring in at the pizza shop. I got a conveyance pack, really look at the location, and jumped in my vehicle. Much to my dismay that this conveyance would take me to the most obscure corner of the human mind. As I moved toward the location, my GPS drove me to a bedraggled, overview house toward the finish of a ruined road. The spot seemed as though it hadn't seen a new layer of paint in many years. I delayed the slightest bit, considering whether I ought to try and escape my vehicle. Be that as it may, I really wanted the cash, so I took a full breath and thumped on the entryway. The entryway squeaked open gradually, uncovering a faintly lit inside. The smell that drifted out hit me like an unexpected stopping point, a disgusting blend of form and something different I couldn't exactly put. My senses were shouting at me to turn and run, yet I had something important to take care of. A moderately aged man with unkempt hair and a wild search in his eyes remained in the entryway. He had a peculiar smile all over, similar to he knew something I didn't. I gave him the pizza and sat tight for installment. That is when things got ugly. The man's smile augmented as he gradually counted out the money. However, at that point, his look moved, and I followed his eyes to a progression of upsetting canvases on the walls. They were unusual and appalling, portraying scenes of savagery, demise, and unfathomable abhorrences. I felt a chill run down my spine. I attempted to keep my self-control and take the cash, however when I had it in my grasp, the man's attitude changed. He snatched my wrist with a bad habit-like hold, his nails diving into my skin. Alarm flooded through me as he murmured, "I'm a craftsman. These artworks, they're totally propelled by genuine encounters." My heart beat in my chest as I understood I was within the sight of a disturbed person. I figured out how to break liberated from his grip and staggered in reverse, almost dropping the cash. Without the slightest hesitation, I ran back to my vehicle and hurried away from that terrible house. At the point when I got back to the pizza shop, I enlightened my administrator regarding the chilling experience. We chose to call the police, who vowed to explore what is going on. I never figured out what occurred with that man, and I genuinely want to believe that I won't ever do. Right up till now, I can't shake the sensation of fear that washed over me that evening. It's an obvious update that peril can sneak behind any entryway, in any event, when you're simply attempting to convey a pizza. Thus, individual Redditors, kindly be mindful out there, and consistently pay attention to your gut feelings. No one can tell when you could coincidentally find a genuine harrowing tale of your own. Story 2. I work part-time as a pizza conveyance fellow to earn a living wage while I wrap up school. Most evenings are routine, loaded up with conveying pepperoni and mushroom pies to hungry clients. In any case, one night, I got a request that would torment my fantasies. It was a desolate, downpour-drenched Friday night when I got the call. The request came from a location that I'd never been to. An odd feeling of disquiet washed over me as I entered it into my GPS. The house was concealed toward the finish of a forlorn street, encompassed by thick woods. The absence of street lamps made it frightfully dim. I showed up at the location, and the house remained there, old and feeble, as though it had been deserted for a really long time. I twofold actually look at the location, however it was right. Contrary to what I would usually prefer, I snatched the pizza and moved toward the front entryway, my heart beating. The entryway squeaked open gradually, and a frosty draft creeped me out. Inside, the spot was faintly lit, and the air was weighty with an unsavory smell. I circumspectly called out, "Pizza conveyance," yet got no reaction. My senses shouted at me to leave, yet I had something important to take care of. As I wandered further into the house, I saw particular images and drawings on the walls, all in some obscure language. My heart hustled quicker as I climbed a creaky flight of stairs to the subsequent floor. Toward the finish of the passage, I found the way to the room where the request had come from. I thumped delicately, my hand shudder. The entryway squeaked open, uncovering a room loaded up with candles, odd curios, and a gathering wearing ghostly, hooded robes. In the focal point of the room lay an enormous, fancy table decorated with strange images, and on it was the pizza box. One of the robed figures went to me, their face taken cover behind a veil. Their voice was cold and unfeeling as they said, "You are normal. Go along with us." My trepidation arrived at a limit, and I darted out of the room, down the steps, and out of that pitiful house. I didn't think back until I was securely in my vehicle. What I saw actually creeps me out. The robed figures had assembled at the window, their veils gazing at me with a disrupting power. I hurried away from that repulsive spot and called my supervisor to make sense of the odd circumstance. He advised me to promptly get back to the store. As I drove back, I was unable to shake the inclination that I had coincidentally found something evil, something outside my ability to understand. Right up till now, I can't fail to remember those weird images, the unpleasant appearances behind the veils, or the apprehension that grasped me that evening. I quit my place of employment as a pizza conveyance fellow soon after, unfit to shake the ghostly experience from my psyche. In this way, individual Redditors, that is my unnerving pizza conveyance harrowing tale. I want to believe that you delighted in it, however I wouldn't wish an encounter like that on anybody. Remain protected out there, and consistently pay attention to your gut feelings, in any event, when you're simply conveying a pizza. Story 3. It was a common Friday night, and I was on my typical pizza conveyance shift. My telephone rang, and I saw the location spring up on the screen. It was a faintly lit road in a calm rural area, not excessively far from the pizza joint. The client had requested an enormous pepperoni with additional cheddar. Appeared to be a sufficiently straightforward conveyance. As I pulled up to the location, a shudder ran down my spine. The house was an old, frail structure that seemed as though it hadn't seen upkeep in years. The yard was congested with weeds, and the windows were blocked with compressed wood. I delayed the slightest bit, considering whether I ought to try and escape my vehicle. Hesitantly, I got the pizza and advanced toward the front entryway. It squeaked open unfavorably as I thumped. Minutes after the fact, a pale, emaciated man with wild, unkempt hair replied. His eyes dashed around apprehensively as though he anticipated that a person or thing should leap out all of a sudden. "Here is your pizza," I stammered, attempting to sound sure regardless of my disquiet. He took the container and gave me a folded chunk of change, not trying to count it. I saw the bizarre images inked on his fingers, however I wouldn't even come close to getting some information about them. I simply needed to leave. As I went to leave, he snatched my arm with amazing strength. His grasp resembled a bad habit, and his voice shuddered as he murmured, "You ought to leave this spot. They're watching, continuously watching." I yanked my arm free and hurried back to my vehicle, heart beating. What had I recently found? I was unable to shake the inclination that something was frightfully amiss with that house. As I hurried away from the dreadful house, my telephone hummed with another conveyance demand. It was a help to have an interruption from the disrupting experience I had recently experienced. I went to the following location, expecting a more typical communication. The subsequent conveyance was to a cordial family in a sufficiently bright rural home. They welcomed me with grins and, surprisingly, tipped liberally. It was a conspicuous difference to the past client, however I was unable to shake the inclination that I was being watched. As the night wore on, I was unable to shake the anxiety that had settled over me. I continued to look in my rear view reflect, half hoping to see the thin man's face gazing back at me. Each time the telephone rang with another conveyance, I felt an ache of fear. Hours after the fact, when my shift at last finished, I got back to the pizza joint and described the unusual experience to my colleagues. They excused it as an unusual oddball and dismissed it. However, I was unable to shake the inclination that something evil hid in the shadows of that calm rural road. Right up till now, I keep away from that area of town at all costs. I will always remember the night I conveyed pizza to a bad dream, and I might dare to dream that the unusual man's admonition was only the ramblings of an upset person. In any case, some of the time, at an ungodly hour, I can't resist the urge to contemplate whether there's something else to that house besides what might be expected. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos, hit the subscribe button. And if you have something to say, please leave a comment.